Hi, and welcome to the last session of Uniquely You, doing a deeper dive into genetics. This one is going to be basically just a walkthrough of a genetic report, sort of a glimpse into what you can expect to learn about yourself if we meet and go over your unique genetic report. So just a quick rundown of what um, is in each genetic report. So we go over the cellular systems, which I will go into each of these in a little bit detail in the future slides, but basically cellular systems, the individual body systems, the cardiovascular health system, energy, which is basically how your body uses the food that you eat, and how exercise can impact that, and how much fat you can have on your body can impact that as well. So it's a very nuanced section. It's really important. And activity, so training response. So if you do any type of sports or training, it's a really interesting area to dive into. And then a few individual nutrients and how your unique biochemistry is working with those nutrients. So what happens when we meet is that if anything is triggered as being a high impact on your health, and I can tell from your symptoms or your and the signs that your body is showing you, or any problems or issues that you've had, I can dive into some of those individual criteria and give you a few recommendations, both lifestyle and nutrition wise, that can help in that individual area. So if inflammation was an issue for you, meaning your genes are telling me that your body is revved up and ready to jump into the inflammatory phase, and it may have a hard time getting out of that phase. Remember in one of the previous sessions, we kind of talked about how your body gives signals to turn down the inflammatory process. And that's some of that is modulated by epigenetics. These are some ways that you can use nutrition and lifestyle strategies if you're prone to inflammation to turn down that inflammation. So using relaxation techniques to reduce stress, avoiding eating 3 hours before bed, intermittent fasting can be a benefit as well here. Eliminating any type of inflammatory triggers, so that's any toxins, pesticides, cleaning products, cosmetics, air fresheners, all of those could be inflammatory triggers. Eliminating inflammatory foods, those are going to be your sugar, your highly processed foods, which contain seed oils often, many times, and really focusing on those anti-inflammatory foods, which are your whole foods, specifically, berries, olives, focusing on those omega-3s, making sure that we're including zinc, selenium, and even quercetin and luteolin to help reduce that inflammation. Those help turn on those signals to reduce inflammation, as well as the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin D and vitamin E. And these are just general recommendations. Again, when I'm working with someone, I can really help you narrow down various approaches that really are key to you and what's going to work for you, and what you feel like that you can do in your day-to-day life. So that is where that personalized approach will come in. If your genes are telling me you have issues with detoxification, here's some general recommendations that I could give you and that we could go over. Consuming 2 to 3 cups of cruciferous vegetables, which are going to be like your broccoli, your cauliflower, arugula, cabbage, sprouts, Be sure you're including lots of neutralizing foods, so like garlic, radishes, asparagus, onion, apples, nuts, seeds, and ginger are all neutralizing foods that help kind of neutralize and tamper down or kind of upregulate your detoxification system to get rid of the toxins that are in your body. Avoid GMO foods and non-organic foods as much as possible. Again, those type of foods can be adding toxins into your body, and we want to try and limit that as much as possible, especially if your detoxification system is sluggish in any way. Include vitamins that support our liver health. Our liver is our main detoxifier in our body and does a lot of work for us. So we need to make sure that we have the vitamins available to support that. And those are many of the B vitamins, magnesium, selenium, taurine, and zinc. Really aim for 25 to 40 grams of fiber per day. That will help us all eliminate the toxins so they don't build up in our system. And then again, just trying to avoid any toxins as much as you can. Intermittent fasting again can be helpful in this area to activate detoxification, and then again the avoiding eating 3 hours before bed, and then also incorporating detoxification techniques. So any way you can sweat is going to kind of push those toxins out. Massages will do that. Rebounding, which is basically just jumping up and down, getting that body, that blood flow throughout your body, and then dry brushing also does the same thing. So this is actually, we're going to dive into my individual report here. And I just like to do this because I like to point out that, when I had this done for myself for the first time, I did make a lot of nutrition and lifestyle changes based on this information because I just thought it was so important to make these changes, because I did have some high impact genes that could impact my health. And so, I want to do the best I can to be the best version of myself that I could possibly be. So on my report, on my cellular overview, and this is really like where I start with everybody. If there's any purple or maroon on this page, I really want to zero in on that, because if you don't sort of tackle this and get on top of how your cells are running in your body, then, the rest of it, it kind of isn't going to work the way that it needs to either. So, really tackling inflammation and detoxification, oxidative stress. I think we all kind of know what those mean. The one area that we may not know a lot about, because it's not talked about that as common as inflammation and detoxification and oxidative stress, is methylation. And methylation is part of the cellular process. So I just like to kind of go over what exactly that is, just real quickly, so when you get your report and if it's flagging and we need to discuss it, sort of you have in your mind a little bit about what it possibly is. Methylation is basically the biochemical process of making sure every cell is functioning properly and optimally. Methylation is involved in repairing genetic matter, so in DNA synthesis. So it helps avoid any genetic changes or alterations that can impact our health. So if methylation isn't working properly, then you have a risk of genes sort of mutating, and that's when your increased risks of disease, especially cancer, can come into play. Methylation is involved in producing energy. So if you feel sluggish and tired a lot, this could be one reason why you're just not methylating properly. It could be a part of how we respond to stress and how we handle inflammation. So feelings of overwhelm, inability to handle things can often lead to stress and inflammation in the body. And methylation is involved in how our cells detoxify. So that's how, obviously detoxification is another category here, but methylation is involved in both in the detoxification and the inflammation process. How our brain chemistry works, so it affects our mood and our sleep patterns. And it is the main part of the process that actually helps turn off and on genes that we kind of talked about with epigenetics, how to turn off and on genes when they get stuck. And you want to naturally be able to do that. And methylation is a huge part of that. So if you're not methylating properly, then that's going to help. That's going to affect how your body's ability to turn off and turn on genes whenever they're needed to help keep you healthy. So as you can see, ensuring your body is methylating properly is imperative for your overall health. If you are not methylating properly, there will be a domino effect through the rest of your body. So it is important to do whatever we can to try and support this system. So as you can see, I have some purple going on there. So methylation, inflammation, and detoxification are of possible risk factors with me and my overall health. So what did I do? Well, for methylation, I increased folate foods and added a methylated form of folate because this is very, very important to keep the methylation process flowing efficiently. You have to have enough folate, which is a B vitamin. I increased foods with choline and added a phosphatidylcholine supplement. Again, choline is very, very important to keep the methylation cycle running. So I wanted to ensure that I had enough choline. And I increased ways of de-stressing, doing meditation, yoga, incorporating breathing exercises, just ways of really tampering down stress, because excess stress can put excess you having extra stress can put excess stress on methylation, which can then have a down effect on how everything is running in the rest of your body. So inflammation is a risk factor for me as well. So again, that meditation, mindfulness, breathing, exercise, and yoga can all help with inflammation. No more snacking, especially at night, because that is very inflammatory to your body. Reduce processed and sugary foods. Again, those are foods that cause inflammation in the body. I made sure that I add anti-inflammatory foods. So I really focus on getting omega-3s in every week. I try and eat, anywhere between 6 to 8 ounces of salmon every week because that's such a strong source of omega-3s, as well as taking an omega-3 supplement as well. And then really focusing on a variety of fruits and vegetables, which all have anti-inflammatory properties. And then I worked on reducing my toxin exposure in a huge variety of ways, which I won't go into now, but really reducing that toxin exposure. So for detoxification, the same thing, reducing that toxin exposure. We actually got a sauna and I use it at least 4 times a week to try and sweat out as many toxins as I can. I focus on getting at the very least, 25 grams of fiber per day. Again, that's coming from my fruits and vegetables, plant foods, legumes, whole grains, eating a variety of fruits and vegetables, because the more variety you get, the more detoxification and anti-inflammatory components of those fruits and vegetables get into your body and help make sure those systems are running. I added cruciferous vegetables and a sulforaphane supplement, with both really upregulate detoxification in the body. So really, the overall thing is just to kind of keep these processes running as much as possible. So the next part is just your overall systems and your cardiovascular overview. So I do have some purple here, mainly in the blood pressure and the bone health. So that's where I focus the most. Everything else is that kind of that olive green or that teal color, which means that they're a little lower impact on my body than the blood pressure and the bone health. But there is one thing I want to point out in the report. So, if you look obviously it looks like I have a lower risk with cholesterol and glucose insulin management, but both of these show up quite a bit in my family history. And I do have cholesterol levels that are on the higher end, and my fasting blood sugar can be a bit high from time to time too. So how does that make any sense if these are kind of showing as not being big triggers in my genetics? And this is where sometimes we have to dig just a bit deeper and not just rely on what this test is telling us at first glance. So this test is kind of looking at, generally speaking, genes and how they might impact your health. And this is where I always like to dive a little bit deeper into personal family history and any symptoms or issues like your lab values that you have that may cause me to look a little bit deeper into certain areas. So even if it's not showing up as a high risk on the report, when I looked a bit deeper at my cholesterol genes, I found out I don't properly process fat from plant foods, meaning when I eat fats from plants, they can cause my cholesterol to go up because they don't go down the protective pathway like they do in most people. So this is really important information to know because I was eating a lot of plants. So like nuts and seeds and avocados that do have healthy fats. But in me, it just means that I need to kind of watch the amount that I eat of those foods for my overall cholesterol level. So it doesn't mean that I don't eat them at all. It just means that I'm aware of the amount that I'm eating of them. Also, I have an issue with utilizing and metabolizing choline, and we'll see that when we go into the nutrients section. And how you utilize and metabolize choline plays a really large role in eliminating cholesterol from the body, in the liver. And so I really make sure that I focus on choline foods. And like I said, I take a choline supplement because of this, because I want to make sure that I'm supporting my liver as much as possible to make sure that it's clearing out that cholesterol. So also when I looked at my glucose and insulin genes, nothing really stood out, but when I take into consideration my age, my stage of life, and the fact that I'm female, once you hit those perimenopause and menopause years, that drop in estrogen can affect how you metabolize carbohydrates. Stress can also affect your blood sugar levels. So that has nothing to do with genetics, but I did want to point out that sometimes if you know you have an issue in an area, like your labs are off or you have certain symptoms, we may need to dig a bit deeper other than genetics or look beyond them to get answers to what we're looking for. And that is where I get to play a little bit of detective and uncover things that may not seem quite so obvious. But I do see that I am salt sensitive, and that can affect my blood pressure. So I try and monitor my salt intake, and then also make sure that I'm increasing my potassium because it's really the balance between sodium and potassium that can alter that blood pressure. So if you make sure that you're increasing your potassium and getting around 4 to 5 grams of potassium a day, then it can possibly offset any type of blood pressure issues that you might be having. And then bone health is a very high concern according to my genetics here. And so I always make sure that I get daily sunlight because that's how I get my vitamin D and take a vitamin D3 and K2 supplement. Because one of the issues with bone health is that I just do not, my body does not utilize the vitamin D that it gets from the sun the way that it should and get it to the proper form in the body. And so I really have to make sure that I do take vitamin D, get my vitamin D levels checked to make sure everything's in the right area there. Really focusing on weight training because weight training and resistance training is imperative for overall bone health, as well as really focusing on collagen and getting some collagen every day to give that support to my bones. So here is the nutrients overview that I kind of talked about, and Here you can see at the bottom, towards the bottom of the left-hand side of the page where I talked about the choline. I'm at a very high risk of not absorbing and utilizing choline efficiently. So my need for choline is very high. It's increased significantly because of this. And so I increased my choline foods again and added a choline supplement to try and support that. Earlier in the lessons, I talked about the caffeine, and I do metabolize caffeine very slowly, so I have to monitor that, make sure I don't do too much caffeine. Um, and then vitamin D again is very high. I do not utilize vitamin D the way that my body is supposed to. And so again, I really got to focus on getting vitamin D foods and supplement because there aren't a whole lot of vitamin D foods. So most of our vitamin D comes from the sun, and if you don't have the ability to take that sunlight and your body is very poor at turning it into a usable form in the body, then you're going to have to supplement. I don't have an inability to transport vitamin C that I eat throughout the body, and so my vitamin C needs are higher than most people. Just because of that, I don't absorb it, and it doesn't get moved around very easily. And so I have to kind of watch my vitamin C and make sure that I'm getting enough. The other areas for me were in the olive green and the teal color, which means they're at lower medium risk. So gluten is a part of that, iron overload, fatty acids, folate, B12, and salt are all a part of the nutrients page. On the energy overview, I said this is very interesting. So, most people are worried about either maintaining their weight or losing weight. And this is where we get a lot of information on how our body absorbs and utilizes the energy that we eat. So on this page, you can see there's a lot of purple going on for me. So I'll start at the very top with appetite and satiety. Basically, for me, it takes a large volume of food for me to feel full. That's not true for everybody. Some people can eat far less food and their body's satisfied. But for some people, including myself, I need more volume of food to get that trigger or that signal in my body. And so basically, I have to really concentrate on more high volume, lower calorie, high fiber and protein foods to try and get there. The more fiber and protein foods have the more of a satiety effect that they have. And so I have to concentrate on that. I also have very pro-inflammatory fat, which means that any fat cells that I do have are very, very inflamed. And so that just means that I'm at a higher risk of having a lot of inflammation if I do increase my fat cells. So the best way to kind of do that is just to make sure that you kind of keep your fat cells in check to make sure that they are not pumping out inflammatory responses. So that, and I have decrease what's called adipogenesis, which means I have a decreased ability for my body to get into those fat stores and pull the energy out. And so once that fat goes into those stores, it wants to stay there. It doesn't want to release it for energy. And so because of those two things, I really focus on a lower fat diet, less than 30% total calories, less than 10% saturated fat. And then I incorporate fasting windows to try and have breaks from food in my bodies to try and push towards that side for the body to have to reach into the fat cells. You can do this with exercise as well. Um, Other things that are on here is your general energy expenditure, which is usually called like your basal metabolic rate, or how much many calories you need to burn at rest. I'm in the medium range. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm not somebody who burns really high and like has a high metabolism, but I'm not somebody that has like a really slow metabolism either. Um, I do have what's called a strong exercise response, meaning that if I do exercise, um, I do get I am able to reach into my glycogen stores and use those really efficiently and effectively to maintain or lose weight. So I have a very strong, I know it says low here, but I have a strong response to that. On the flip side, there are people that have a very slow response to that, meaning they could go to the gym every day and run themselves crazy. And it's really hard for them to dip into those stores and get the energy to burn for that. So there is a difference between people and that. So I take advantage of that exercise burn. And then overall, because of everything on this page, I have a very high resistance to weight loss. So, and a very positive lean towards weight gain. And so this is definitely something that I focus on and make sure that I try and take advantage of any pros that I have. And then make sure that I'm paying attention to how I store fat and utilize fat. Um, and then the activity section is really fun and interesting for anybody who does any sports or training of any kind. So basically, it's going to tell you whether you have a very high training response or a low training response. So a high training response is going to mean that when you train for something that you see quick results, you see yourself getting faster, you see yourself getting stronger, you see progress in that training very quickly. And some people that occurs quickly, and some people that takes a lot of time. So this is kind of good to know if where you're at on that realm, so you know and don't get discouraged that it just might take you a little bit longer. You're just somebody that takes longer to adapt to that training. I also have very high endurance, very high power. Power is strength, and then strength, and then quickness, like sprinting as well. So I have positive in those. And then I have low injury risk and then a medium recovery. So those the injury risk and the recovery are good to know, because if you're somebody that has a very high recovery risk, meaning that they just need more time to recover. So it's going to be best for your body to take that time to recover longer in between training or exercise sections than it would be to push through. When you're inflamed and not quite all the way recovered. So that's something really good to know, because you could be doing a disservice to your body if you push and get back to training or exercising too much, too often. So that's something good to know. And then your injury risk as well. Like if you're somebody who's prone to injuries, then you're going to have to tamper down your training just a little bit. Just to make sure that you avoid injury of any kind. And then it's also like going back to the endurance and power, it's also kind of fun and good to know, like, are you more inclined, is your body more set up for endurance, or is it more set up for power and sprints and hits? And that can just, determine where you want to spend your time. It doesn't mean that if you're set up for power and hits and you have very low endurance, that you can't do things like marathons and longer races. It just might mean that you have to train a bit harder to be successful at those things. And then so this report does not have the gut health or sleep genes category, but I always like to look at these individual genes because research does show that genes do affect these two areas. And they are often so important to kind of complete the entire picture for somebody, and determine some of the different recommendations that I give. So I actually have issues in both of these areas, and my genes help guide me to ways I can help improve these areas. So, just really focusing on probiotics and prebiotic types of food, avoiding those inflammatory foods, all help my gut out. And then sleep, just staying on a really good sleep routine, and doing all the sleep hygiene type of things that really help me keep my sleep on track, because I do have a hard time and difficulty sleeping. So there are a lot of things that you can do there as well. And so basically what I do is I take all of this genetic information and I evaluate it and relate it back to whatever your goals are, whatever symptoms you're having, any issues that you're having, any health history, family health history that you're concerned about. And I'll put together a personalized nutrition and lifestyle plan. And these are some example of parts of some reports that I put together to go over with my clients, explaining what I'm seeing in their genetic report, comparing your genes to the signs and symptoms, again, that you're kind of telling me along with your goals. And then we formulated lifestyle and nutrition strategies to help get to your goals. So I could basically just kind of go through and explain what I'm seeing, the reasons behind it, and then discuss some strategies that'll help you reach your goals. And then, of course, I'm always going to make sure that you're armed with all the information you need to make those changes. So these are a bunch of recipe packs and meal plans and nutrition and lifestyle guides that kind of help lay out where you need to focus, and how what foods to incorporate or cut out, or certain lifestyle changes to make to help get you to your goals. So that's it. We have reached the end of lesson 4 of this Uniquely You, discovering genetics with me. And so hopefully this answered any questions that you may have had.